you notice the changes we have in the UX UI design industry now. First of all, jobs are back, but they are all different. Then GenAI for UI is developing at the record speed, and the new tools are coming every day, and this is quite overwhelming. Third, product designers are now required to do content design and user research, and that is backed up by a recent tweet from a founder of Shopify who said that they got rid of the title as a content designer and user researcher, and now they call everyone a designer. The changes are so rapid that it's hard to keep up, and I decided to make this video to talk about these changes and what will shape the UX UI design career moving forward in 2025. I'm Ines, I'm a principal product designer and I teach design on this channel. Subscribe. Let's start with the job market because it is somewhat good news. We now have our jobs back, but they are changed and we're going to talk about these changes. First of all, how do I know that the UX market is unfrozen? Since maybe a couple of months, I get reached out by recruiters almost daily. Okay, I don't want to exaggerate, but weekly for sure. And I'm not even looking for a job. And previously, I had this same reach out rate only during the pandemic when everybody started hiring as crazy. The second thing that I noticed that there are way more positions for staff and principal product designer. It also used to be not the case even a couple of years ago, even during the pandemic. Honestly, if you are very senior and you wanted to stay on the individual contributor role, you would be having hard time finding a role for yourself because everybody would be hiring a senior designer and maybe a design manager, but not an individual contributor. That situation has changed for sure. I'm surprised about that myself because I thought that the future of my career would look like either me turning to the leadership role and becoming a design manager or just fighting for this handful of roles that we have for principal and staff designers on the market. It is on the surface, looks like a very good trend because companies start to appreciate the individual contributors and they start seeing the value of UX design, of a product design job. But I also sense that there are some other trends that might explain why we suddenly hire so many senior individual contributors. And the first trend is that we are now doing more as UX UI designers. I was going to talk about that later on in the video, how the titles are merging, but I will just make a glimpse on this idea here is that if we are now doing more as product UX designers, then we need to kind of have more experience to do that many things. And you can only gain this experience when you are higher than a senior designer. So this is my first explanation why we might have so many senior and principal designer roles on the market. But the second assumption is that we clearly have an inflation of the job titles in UX UI design. So when I started in UX UI design, we only had like maybe junior designers or apprentices and just senior or middle career designer, just designers basically. And then we started getting to these ladders and now we have junior designers, middle career designers, senior designers, principal designers, and companies are interested in retaining people who are loyal to them. I mean, not every company is interested in that, but the majority of companies for sure. And that's why they face a problem. What to do with the people that are maybe in the 35, 40 years and they have already like 20, 15 years in this career and they just don't know what to do more and how to move forward. And that forces them to seek other opportunities that eventually will be looking almost the same as the opportunity they had before. And that leads to people being unsatisfied and not feeling this sense of the progress. This is actually not a new trend, and our fellow engineers, they were dealing with this problem for quite some time. That's why if you will have a look on the titles that most tech companies are having for engineers, you will see that they have ladders that are way higher up from the UX UI designer folks, and some companies they get even to the distinguished engineer positions where apparently this person is really high up in this career hierarchy. I don't don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing for a company. Being that hierarchical might be very beneficial. At the same time, it might lead to bureaucracy. So let's see how this trend will turn out. But we definitely have this tendency in UX UI design field as well, and I will not be surprised if in time we will also see some titles like distinguished designer posted somewhere. I would actually not mind having this title. I think it sounds sophisticated. Another thing that I noticed in the job postings that come my way or that are posted for designers of a middle career range, senior career range, is that they all require knowing the modern AI tools. And some roles, they explicitly mention vibe coding. And here it would be an ideal segue to the next section or the next trend that I identify in the field is the existence and the development of the generative AI tools for UI. Even a year ago, I remember reviewing Galileo AI, and I remember posting that it might be a good thing for a very simple screen design, like a settings screen that you can then export to Figma, but maybe not more than that. But now the situation has changed, and probably you also know that already, that we have a plethora of tools that will allow you to generate a very nicely coded, or maybe not very nicely coded, but somehow coded UI design that you can use straight away. You can export it to the GitHub, you can merge it to your own product, and you can do a lot of things with that right away, even skipping this part with Figma altogether. And I've been reviewing those tools like non-end in my Instagram channel. There are tools that I played a bit more with, and I did my review for them already. It's Claude, Lovable, and Relume. You can find the video I posted 2 weeks ago about how I use Claude in my actual workflow at the company where I work. And you can see way more reviews on my Instagram in the short form video. But I have even more tools to review in my pipeline and to play with. It's Replit, DeepSight, and Juni. And I am not familiar with the names yet because I have not opened them even, because I am overwhelmed with how many things are in the development right now. And honestly, this feeling of being overwhelmed, it's not only coming because I'm not keeping up with the content to tell you about how to use those tools, to actually get familiar with them myself, to make then short form and long form videos. That is the part-time, that is for me more of a hobby. I'm overwhelmed in the pressure I have at work to be using those tools, at the same time having so many problems with the existing ecosystem and the existing product development process that are basically not allowing me to use them. Let me tell you what I mean. The thing is that all those tools, they are now highly complicated to work with if you don't have special training and if you don't know how code works, in order to force them to use your actual design components. And the last week at my work, we had a hack week, and one team was experimenting with vibe coding in order to force a tool to integrate the components that we have. It is possible to do right now. It is actually my project that we are working on right now. I'm working in a more or less traditional way with it. So I have some Figma designs created, and then the team tried to turn them into the actual workable code using our standards and our libraries. But it was highly complex, and a regular UX UI designer who is not familiar with the code on a more advanced level, it is impossible to do that, to force the tool right now to be integrated that closely with the product you are working on. At the same time, every conversation I've been so far, both at work and outside work, it prompts me to think that I am falling behind with all those tools because I did not figure out yet how to make them work in order to kind of release the thing that I create and vibe code there, right, to the production. And I feel that there is this gap here. So we have to be proficient with this tool already. And companies, they are really reminding employees that, hey, you have to keep up. Here is the educational budgets if your company is a nice one. But at the same time, we are not going to work on the processes, we're not going to work on the infrastructure, we're not going to dedicate special time to work with them in order for you to actually use your skills. So I feel that the skills that I obtain playing with vibe coding right now, they are not as developed as they could be, provided that my environment would allow me to use them officially. And on top of that, at least in my situation, we don't have a dedicated budget to buy those tools and those subscriptions to play out with them. Even for Claude AI, the most basic and the most developed tool right now, we don't even have the clearance from the security team that we are allowed to use this tool and we are allowed to tell this model our actual data and our actual tasks. And that also complicates the process for me. And I don't know, maybe it's only my company and my team that is falling that behind, although I don't think that it is honestly the case because my company and my team is pretty much advanced, but we don't know what to expect from those tools. If I will upload an actual product brief to Claude AI, will it be using it somewhere else, for example? And sometimes it happens that I have there some sensitive information that we don't want to leak out. And because of this discrepancy and those valid concerns, I am kind of also restricted in the way how I can use these tools in my workflow. And frankly, I also don't know how to use them more than what I showed you 2 weeks ago in this video that I mentioned. So here is my situation. I feel like I have to learn them, but at the same time, I cannot use them at the actual workplace. And that honestly creates a frustration for me, and I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm feeling that I am behind. But I think it is important for me to talk about that because UX UI design, it's not always like fun and roses, and every time I actually mention something that I don't like and that frustrates me in UX UI design, people in the comments, they ask me, why do you work here then? Why do you teach that? Well, there is no career that is ideal, there is no workplace that is ideal as well, so I feel it is important to highlight what frustrates me and what is not working. Let's see how this situation will change going forward. I'm sure that companies will figure out the security issues and the budgeting issues to allow designers and product development folks to use those tools, and then we will get more sophisticated and more advanced. But for the now, the situation is the way it is. I'm only experimenting with them in my free time and on my own budget. By the way, if you like this video and you want to receive more videos like that, then give me thumbs up and hit the subscribe button down below. That's important for me and for YouTube algorithms to start recommending you similar videos. And we are moving on. And the last trend I wanted to talk about is something that I mentioned before already, is that product designers are now expected to do user research jobs and the content design jobs. And I think this is happening everywhere, and the layoffs that were affecting user researchers are happening massively throughout 2025 and even earlier than that. And I think, unfortunately, we are going to see more examples of that happening. And from what I can see, unfortunately, the content designers, folks, they are also often affected by those changes. But at the same time, that means that I am, as a general product designer, I now have to do their work. And I don't know, and I don't always feel that I am set to success here. So first of all, I'm not an English native speaker, and yes, now it is the perception that I have all those models and my skills are sufficient enough to assess the results that those models are giving me. We are now training models to replicate the tone of voice and the content design guidelines that we have. That is all clear and that is also all very nice and helpful, but still, I kind of don't feel that I am the best person to do this job going forward. Maybe I'm wrong and it's only important that we don't have typos and that we are overall using the same language and that we are not using the passive voice, for example. But I have just this insecurity that probably comes from the fact that I'm not a native speaker, and that worries me a bit, this part that I will have to do it more going forward. And maybe I'm gonna be fine writing the error messages or just general UX copy, but what about more creative copy? Are we going to have separate people, separate content designers that are going to be a bit more creative and they are going to create slogans and I don't know, just titles and headers for marketing pages, or is it something that I'm also gonna do now? That is a bit of a concern for me. With the UX research, I'm being honest that I'm more familiar with UX research because previously I used to be working in the teams that did not have user researchers, so I had to adopt this skill quite early in my career. So I'm kind of familiar with this field. I'm okay driving even complex research methods, maybe sometimes with the help of some materials, of course, because it's not always that I do quantitative research in my day-to-day work. I might have to remind myself of the best practices here, but of course I cannot help feeling that it's not like that for the rest of people. And it just will require from people who are just starting out in the UX UI design career to actually study this field as well with the same rigor that they would study the UI design and the UX design part. And this is just a lot. And this will prolong the time people will have to take in order to start in this career. And I don't know, maybe it is a good thing because then nothing is lost from the user research that we do ourselves. This is always a good thing, I would say. But let's see how it will actually develop and if the education that we receive right now as UX UI designers will be keeping up with this trend. That is my real concern. And unlike a content design part, where at least I could imagine like more sophisticated tools that proofread for me, that maintain these guidelines and the tone of voice, maybe the confidence here will raise for me as when I will be using those tools in my day-to-day work. But the UX research part is way more complex, and sometimes you have to act spontaneously on a user interview, and you sometimes have to really craft really nicely done surveys because you can only run them once. And those things, they will put a lot of responsibility on us UX UI designers, or maybe on PMs who will have to do this work going forward. And I don't really see a clear tool that can substitute this knowledge for everyone. Of course, we will have to now use the tools that automate the research operations. This is something I also have to actually learn right now at my work. On top of my work, on top of playing with vibe coding, on top of that all, I also have to upskill in using the Great Question tool. But it is fun. It is nicely done tool, so I'm enjoying that, of course, but my time and my resource is limited. But let's actually see how it is gonna work in the future. For now, I think what is going to be important for people who are looking for a job is to actually demonstrate way more qualities and way more implementation of their skills in the product development process. I think if I would bet my money on how the hiring will go moving forward, is that we will be looking for more generalists, people who can drive more things during the product development process, from user research, from defining the problem, from actually executing on the solution, and maybe even launching the first version of this solution, the first clickable prototype, right in the production or in the testing environment. and probably it is not going to be enough just to focus solely on the UX UI design part. And when I was preparing to this video, I was actually thinking for myself that indeed right now the title UX UI designer for me sounds a bit outdated. I feel like right now we have a bigger distinction between product designers who are working in tech companies and who are required to do this user research and vibe coding, and the UX UI designers who are working in agencies. And it is, in my mind, especially crucial to know the differences between those work types in order to aim in the correct direction in your career and with your portfolio. But as I'm working in the product design side, I'm mostly talking about that now, although I have 9 years of experience working in agencies. But I just can't help noticing that we are also getting rid of the name user experience right now in all of the documents. If we will have somewhere occasionally written UX design, somebody will definitely point out that it has to be product design. This is a very, very tiny trend, but it is happening there, and the tweet that I mentioned from the Shopify founder also speaks up in the favor of this tendency that is happening. To sum it up, I think to the extent these trends, they are foreseeable. When I just started in UX UI design 16 years ago, I just had to develop one breakpoint for one device that is a web device. Then I had to develop 3 breakpoints that I had to design for multiple devices, and then you see how gradually my job description is changing and how gradually and stably it is expanding. It's just right now, because we have those technologies that are developing quite fast, this only accelerate this trend. And I think this is something we will have to adopt moving forward. And probably this is something that is going to be a bit hard to keep up, because previously I had some years to learn how mobile design is working. I did not have to be in a rush. Right now, in 2025, I really feel that I have to be in this rush. And I just wanted to talk about that in this video in case you also are in this rush and you are also under this pressure and you are feeling overwhelmed, then you know that it's not only you who are suffering from that. And I will keep you posted on the development of the UX UI design industry as I see it. And if you want to share your perspective and how the adoption of the newest AI tools for UI design is going on in your workplace, then leave the comment down below and let's continue the discussion there. And if you like this video and you want to receive more videos like that, then hit the subscribe button down below and click the bell. This way you will get a notification when a new video comes out. And I see you next time.